Welcome, Mindsetters, to another exciting lesson. Today we're doing Maths Lit, grade 10. I'm here with the awesome Haley. She's going to be taking us for today's lesson. Haley, what are we doing today?
Thanks, Ty. Welcome, grade 10s. We're going to be looking at finance today, and I'm hoping we're going to have some fun with certain financial documents that you'll see like around the house. And
yeah, well, I'm trying to be my own business owner, so I need to be listening to this finance stuff, so I know how to do this. So guys, you know the drill. Make sure you have your pens, your pads out, you're making notes. Make sure the page is always open for you guys. So guys, if you're having any issues, if you're lost anywhere, make sure you hit me up so I can tell Haley so we can help you guys out. And remember, we can't help you if you don't help us help you. All right, but guys, we'll see you after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you're ready for another awesome lesson. I'm here with Haley. She's going to be taking you through this maths lesson. Grade 10 Maths Lit. All right, guys, let's get into it. Haley, take it away.
grade 10s, welcome to today's session, and welcome to the second term of lessons. And we now have done all our basics, and we did that all in our first term. So now we're going to use all of these things that we learned, the skills that we learned in the first term. We're going to apply them to kind of real life situations, and the first thing we're looking at is finance. So today we're going to be looking at finance, and I'm going to take you through some documents that you would see on a regular basis in a home. But before we do that, let's find some blank paper, which I know I've got somewhere. Right, let's go ask for our numbers. So Ty, have you got our numbers for us?
Yes, I do.
So I'm going to go with the last session. The last time we were on air,
we had 8144.
8144. Hey, well, I remember we're just like gone over the 8,000 mark, and we were so excited.
Yes. But everyone needs to tell their friends to come and watch too, and get on the page.
Absolutely, you have to tell everybody. What's our number today?
Today's number is 8918. Guys, we're so close to 9,000. And even closer to 10.
So that's great. We are getting close to our party. We said we're going to have a party at 10,000.
I'm ready.
Come on, guys. But look at our nice jump. What's really nice is that it's gone up about like 800 people. And if you just go tell your friends and they tell their friends, and kind of like there's a snowball effect, and let's do it because we're here to help you. And Facebook is one of the mediums we're going to help you. So let's carry on with finance. So what have we got today? I don't have a challenge question for you, and I do apologize for that, but I want to take you through some examples of things that you would see every day. So we hopefully will get back to challenge questions maybe next week. So let's go through and start reading our questions. So question 1 says, here's an example of information given to consumers about electricity costs for households in a city in South Africa. So the consumers are the people that are buying the electricity. So, and this is the information that they get. The amount of electricity used is given as a number of units. So we talk about electricity, I'm going to be using 5 units or 10 units, and that's what we need to discuss. And we've got 2 different rates. So domestic rate 1 says that you're paying 33.28 cents per unit. Now, I want to just make you aware of this fact. So let's find a different color. Right, let's see if I've got red. This is cents per unit. We're dealing with 33.28 cents. That's a very little amount of money. And that's per unit. So you've got to bear this in mind that we're doing our calculation in cents. So if we're later going to convert into rands, because of course we pay our electricity, we pay rands. We don't say, well, I paid 3,000 cents for my electricity. We talk about it in rands. So later, or somewhere along the line, we're going to have to convert that. So it's always important to read what unit they're giving you, what measurement. So let's take this line away now. So 33.28 cents a unit. A service charge of R1.46 per day applies whether electricity is consumed or not. So this is every day that you're using this domestic rate 1, you are paying an amount of R1.46. Doesn't matter if you've got nothing on, no electricity whatsoever, you are still going to be paying that R1.46. And then we compare it to our second one. Let's move down a little bit. Right, our domestic rate 2 is charging 45.99 cents, which is a little bit higher than domestic rate 1, still per unit. that would ideally be used for your consumption is below 350 units per month. The service charge is not applicable to this rate. There is no service charge. So you are paying a higher amount per unit, but you are not paying this daily rate. So those are the difference between the two. And now let's see what our questions actually ask us, and we're going to use this information. Right. We've got a note first. In all the questions that follow, we will consider a month that has 31 days. Now, why is it important for us to know that fact? Because we're dealing with a price per day. Now, if you're not told how many days in a month, then what I want you to do is make an assumption. So let's assume I'm going to be using the month of January and their 31 days. And tell your teacher or your examiner, assumed a 31-day month. And then all your calculations will be based on that assumption. If you would like, and you'd like to use a 30-day month, that's fine too. But as long as you tell us. But in this case, they have given us this information, so we have to use 31 days. Now, the question says, A says, if a household used 380 units of electricity in a month, and they were charged using the domestic rate 1, what would they have to pay for electricity in rands for that month? Okay, so there's quite a few things that we need to do. So let's go back to our rate 1. So we're dealing with rate 1, and we need to read, we've got 33.28 cents per unit. So we can calculate how much it'll cost them for the units that they use. So let's start with that step. Right, let's get a little bit more space. And let's try a different color. I think we should go green. So they're using 380 units. So we're going to say 380 units. And we're going to times it by our price per unit. And that price was 33, comma, can't remember what it was, 33.28. And that was cents per unit. So if I times it by the number of units, I'm going to get the amount that I need to pay. So let's find a calculator. Right. So I've got 380 times by 33.28. And I get an answer of 12646.4. Okay, remember, this is cents. So I'm going to write that number out. So that equals to, now I don't have a pen. Right, it was 12646.4. Just double checking that number, 12646.4. Right. And remember I said to you, I need a pen. That was cents. Now I need to go from cents and I need to convert it to rands because the answer asked me to give me my answer in rands. So I'm going to do that conversion quickly. How many cents in a rand? Well, we've got 100 cents in a rand. So I'm going to divide it by 100. And I can do it on my calculator. Don't think I need to, but let's divide it by 100 on the calculator. And I get an answer of 126,464 rands. So let's write that out. Right, so in rands, this pen doesn't seem to state. I've got a problem with my pen. Absolutely. 464 rands. Now, we don't talk about rands in 2 decimal places. So I need to actually make this, we don't talk about rands in 3 decimal places, but we always talk about 2 decimal places. So this second 4 I can actually just erase because it's lower than 5, so I don't need to round up and round down. That's what I'm paying for the units. But remember with this, there was also a fixed cost. So we need to pay a fixed cost. And what was our fixed cost? We need to add the fixed cost. Our fixed cost was, go back to our unit 1, R1.46 per day. So I'm going to say my fixed cost was R1.46, and we were using a 31-day month. So my fixed cost, now I'll use a calculator again. I'll get my calculator up. Right, was R1.46. And remember, I always tell you to check your calculator as you're going and as you're typing in numbers. It's just a good habit to get into. So R1.46 times 31, I've checked that, and I get an answer of R45.26. So that was 45 Rand 26. So now in total, what are they going to pay? We need to add the two. So our total, let's do our total in a different color. Not that color, that's not going to come out. Our total that they pay is our fixed costs of 45 Rand 26 and the cost for their units of 126 Rand 46. And we can use our calculator to add that. I've already got that. I'm just going to press plus. Okay, delete that. 126,46. And I get an answer of 171 Rand 72. That's what they're paying for electricity. 171 Rand 42. So that's what they pay. Now I'm going to go back and reread the question. Remember, I've told you before, go back and reread. Just double check. Do you actually have you answered exactly what they asked? So what did our question say? If a household used 380 units of electricity, that we used that in a month, and they were charged using the domestic rate 1, what would they have to pay for electricity in rands for that month? We've got that answer. Perfect. Let's go see what our next question asks. Okay, right. We've got our rates again. Now, the second part. If a household used 380 units of electricity in a month, and they were charged using the domestic rate 2, what would they have to pay for electricity in rands? So now we're dealing with 2, and remember there was no fixed cost, so this is a slightly easier calculation because we're only taking our cost per unit. So get some more space here. We had 45.99 cents per unit, and we're going to multiply that by how many units they use, 380. So our calculator out. Right, I had 45.99 cents times by 380. 380, that's 380. And I get an answer of 17476.2. Now, I know from earlier that I needed to convert that to rands. So I'm actually going to do it in one step now. I'm going to divide that by 100 to get my answer. So after 174 Rand 76. So let's get a color. They're paying 174, I can't remember what it was, 174.76. 174 Rand 76. And that's what they're paying for the electricity using the second rate. Hey, should we go see what the next question is? Or how are we doing for time, Tara?
I think we're good. We can still go for one more.
I think we got time to do one more. Let's see what the next question asks. Right. They want us to write an equation. Remember we did equations last term. That relates the monthly payments in rands for electricity, and they want us to use a P, to the number of units of electricity consumed, which they want to use an N. Now, whenever you're asked to use an equation, remember I said to you, you can use words, but they've told us what those words represent. So let's see, the payment, this is the payment, is our P, and let's get another number, another color, and our number of units is N. So we can use those letters rather. So for domestic rate 1, right. Now we want this in rands. Now in the calculation that I did earlier, I calculated how many units they're going to get and got an answer in cents, and then I converted it. What I think we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to convert first. So let's go back up to this unit 1. This 33.28 cents, I'm going to convert. So let's do that, 33.28. So it was 33.28 cents, and I'm going to divide that by 100 to see that in rands I've got 0.3328. Now I'm not rounding off, and this is really, really important. We can carry over, although we talk about rands as 2 decimal places. When we're doing a calculation like this, the reality is that we are charged fraction of a cent. Like this 28 is like a quarter of a cent. But because we compound it with the number of units that we use, that 28 actually does make a huge difference. So we don't round off until the very, very last step of our calculation. So that's our equation. Now, what do we need for domestic 1? Our P is equal to, we had a fixed cost. So our fixed cost was R1.46 times, and they haven't given us a letter for the number of days, or have they? They want the monthly. No, they've given us the number of units. So we're going to have to times this by the number of days. So we can write it out in words. Plus, we've got our rate per unit that we're going to times by the number of units. 0.3328. I'm running out of space. N. Does that fit into my page? I hope that fits in, and I hope you can see that. So let me just rewrite that, I think. Let's try that again. Plus, I'll write smaller. Let's move my plus over. Plus, we had 0.3328, and that was times the number of units. And that's our equation. So I think that should we read what the next question asks? Right. I can get to the next question.
If it decides to behave.
Yeah, absolutely. If it decides. Now they want us to do the same thing for the domestic rate 2. Okay? Now domestic rate 2, now we don't need the number of days because there was no fixed cost, but we do need to convert our 45,99. So let's do that first. Our 45,99, and we're going to divide that by 100, and again we're going to get 0.4599. That is the rate per 100. And again, that's 99.99 cents. It nearly is 46, but it's not quite. So we need to keep our lots of decimals. And what our cost was, which was P, is equal to, we've got no fixed cost. We've only got this cost, our rate per number of units, times by the number of units. You can, if you prefer, put a times next to it, but you don't have to put the times in. Because if you've got a letter next to numbers, it means multiply. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
I
sense
think this is actually quite a nice thing. I'd love to see what the current ones are for the area that you live in, or the area that I live in. Or
that'd be interesting.
would be interesting. Whereas we just pay electricity.
We just
don't
pay. Just
and
paying.
that's what I'm trying to teach them, not to just pay, to actually question. And how do we come about with these numbers?
Because then you can always reclaim.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So guys, we're going to take a little bit of a break. You know what to do. Go grab a snack. Go grab some water. Make sure you guys are ready for the next round. All right? But make sure you come back. That's the whole point. And again, talk to me on the page. It's a little quiet, guys. So get chatting to me. Get chatting to me. Let me know what you guys are thinking. And guys, we'll catch you after this break. And welcome back to Learn Extra Live, guys. Hope you guys are ready for this next session. Because, guys, I'm having fun so far. I'm learning a lot of stuff. I'm learning. That's the whole point. And, guys, chat to me on the page. You know the drill. And, Haley, take it away.
Thanks, Taha. Come on, guys. Give us something on the Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you. It occurred to me during the break that in the last, when we were doing domestic rate 1, so I'm going to go back to domestic rate 1, and remember I said to you, but they didn't give us the number of days, and I was having a little bit of a strange moment there, because in actual fact, the number of days we know we were using a month with 31 days. So what we actually could have done, we know our fixed cost because it was R1.46 for 31 days. And I know we calculated it earlier, but let's just do that calculation again. It was R1.46 times 31, which gave me an answer of R45.26. So I knew what my fixed rate was. It was 45 Rand. I can't remember these numbers. 45.26. So that's my fixed cost for this particular month, and then I can add this 0.3328 and times it by the number of units that we use. Okay, so let's move on. So we did 2. Let's move on to the next part of the question, which I think is this one. Right. There is one value for the number of units consumed per month where you will pay the same, whether you are charged using the domestic rate 1 or the domestic rate 2. This is the amount where the two are equal. So they want us to use the two equations to work out which number of units per month this is, how many units it is per month. So it is the place where the two equations are equal. If we were drawing a graph, it would be the place where the graph intersects, where they cross each other. So with equations, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out the two equations. So let's look at the equations. Let's draw them. Right, the first equation I had was P equals to 45 Rand 26. That color's not great, so let's do that again. Right, so P is 45 Rand 26 plus, it was 0.3328 N. That was domestic rate 1. And let's write in the numbers for domestic rate 2. Need a little bit more space. We had no fixed cost, so it was just our 0.4599 times N. And that was 2. So what am I going to do? I'm basically telling you my P's are going to be equal. So I can make the one equation equal to the other equation, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So let's change our color. Let's try some white. Will white work? So let's get a little bit more space here. I'm running this board's right, misbehaving. So we had our domestic rate 2 times N is equal to our domestic rate 1 times by 0.3328 N. Now what I've done is I've left off the rand signs. I know that I need, well in actual fact I'm going to be ending up with a unit value. But the rand signs, sometimes when I do a calculation like this, when I've got ends, I know they just confuse me. So I leave them out. I know if I have to give an answer, and if I'm looking for P, I'm going to put the rand into my final answer, and now I'm looking for units. So just taking the rands out makes it a little bit easier. Now, what do we need to do? We need to solve for N. We need to know how many units that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the other side of the equation. And the way I do this is, and this is not a times, this is a plus, is you do the opposite of what is happening on that side of the equation. So at the moment, I've got 45 plus 0.3328. So I'm going to say minus. Because if I minus the 0.3328, they cancel each other out. And what I do to that side, I have to do to the other side. So on the other side, I'm going to have the 0.4599 N minus 0.3328 N. And that's all equal to 45.26. Now I can actually calculate that. So let's get our calculator out and say 0.4599 minus 0.3328, and I get an answer of 0.1271. So 1271. So I've got 0.1271 N is now equal to 45 Rand and 26 cents. I need N still. I don't have N on its own. So I'm going to get rid of this. I do the opposite of what's happening in the equation. So right now this is times. I'm going to divide by 0.1271. And I'm going to do the same thing here by 0.1271. Now my calculator, if I'm using a scientific calculator, then I can keep that as my answer and just use the answer button. But I'm going to assume that we don't have a scientific calculator. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to say 45.26 and divide it by 0.1271. And I just double check that I got that right, and I get an answer of 356.09. Now we're dealing with units. Remember, we're paying per unit, so I'm going to round down in this case to 356 units. So my answer to this is 356 units. So if I'm using 356 units in the month, then I could use either of the two options. If I'm using less, then which one's going to be cheaper? That you would see very clearly on a graph. But you could do a few calculations, or we can go back to our calculations we did in A and B and check out which is cheaper. But the question they asked us, have we done the question? They said, there's one value for the number of units consumed per month where you pay the same, and use your two equations to work out which number units per month this is. We've answered our question. That's perfect. I think it's time for us to go on to the next question. Okay, question 2. We're dealing with Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams wants to purchase a house. I'd also like to purchase a house, Ty. How about you?
Yes, I do. I want to own my own place. A couple, actually.
A couple. It would be nice. Okay, so let's see. He wants to pay, okay, we've got this number over here. So let's move this number here. Okay, 1,200,000 rand for the house. That's what he's looking at. Before purchasing the house, Mr. Williams will need to consider a number of hidden costs. There are always hidden costs involved with the purchase. So we're going to answer the questions that follow, which relate to all these hidden costs. I've got a feeling we're going to be calculating all his hidden costs. Quite an interesting exercise. So, the first thing we've got to look at, transfer duty is the amount payable for transferring the property into your name. Now, I know grade 10s, I know that you're not at the stage in your life that you can actually go out and buy a house. So some of these terms are going to be a little foreign to you. But in this question, they actually do explain it. And I'm hoping that you will remember some of these things. And when one day you are ready to buy your house, you'll remember, hey, I remember watching that TV when we watched Mindset. And I'm going to put it out there on Facebook as well. Or I saw it on Facebook, that there are hidden costs involved. And how do I calculate these hidden costs? So we're actually teaching you like life lessons. That's what Maths Lit is all about.
Exactly, guys. Life applied to mathematics. What better way to do it?
Absolutely.
Just actually have a practical example.
Absolutely. And remember these things. Okay, so let's see. We've got transfer duty. So this is the amount that we're transferring the property into your name. So if you're buying a house, you want it to be in your name. Transfer duty is a percentage of the purchase price, which is payable as follows. So we've now got a table. We need to read the whole table to make sense of it and understand, and then we'll move on to calculate Mr. Williams. Right, if you transfer up to 500,000 Rand, that's the cost of the house. This is the price. So this is the house price, the cost of buying the house. If it is up to 500, basically from 0 to 500,000 Rand, there is no transfer duty. Do you have any idea why there's no transfer duty, Ty?
No.
Okay, the government actually has some wise things every now and again. They do some wise little things every now and again. We're going to get into trouble for saying that somewhere.
No, they have a lot of them, a lot of good
a
ideas.
lot of good ideas. But they want to encourage people to buy houses. And they're saying to people, well, especially the people that don't have a fortune of money.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? They say, well, okay, if you buy a house that's less than 500,000 Rand, we're not going to charge you any transfer duties. We will put it into your name and not charge you.
Oh, that's
so it's like
really handy.
really nice. But then they can't actually disadvantage everybody else that can afford houses for over 500,000. So it kind of works on a sliding scale. The first 500,000 Rand of your house, nobody pays transfer duties.
Okay.
So if you buy a house from 500,000 to 1 million, your transfer is calculated at 5% on the value of the house above 500,000.
Oh, so you only pay for the 5%.
So
For the
5%
right.
over that.
Pretty handy.
Okay, but then if you've got a lot of money and you want to buy a more expensive house like Mr. Williams does, well, you now pay more. So now you're paying 8% of the value above 1 million. So they're encouraging people to own houses, and I think it's really nice.
Yes.
So for above 1 million, it's 25,000 Rand plus 8% of the value above 1 million. Now this 25,000 Rand, if you actually had to sit and calculate it, it actually works out as 5% of 500,000. Because between 500,000 and 1 million, we've got 500,000 Rand. So it's basically this entire block here would be 25,000, and that's where that comes from. And then over 1 million, you pay 8%. Right. Let's calculate the transfer duty according to the value of Mr. Williams' house. Now, Mr. Williams had quite a bit of money. Mr. Williams wanted to buy a house that was 1.2 million.
I'm slightly jealous of him.
I'm trying to work out how many zeros are 1.2 million. A little bit jealous myself. Okay, another 3 zeros. 1.2 million Rand. So we have to find it in our table. So where does it fit into our table? It fits right over there. So we are going to be looking at just this block, and that's what Mr. Williams is going to pay. So he's going to pay, let me find some more space, 25,000 Rand plus 8% of the value above. So it's 8% of, which is times, the value above 1 million. So what I need to do is find out how much of his house is above 1 million. So I take the value of his house, which is 1.2 million, and I minus 1 million. Because that gives me the amount that's above. I haven't got enough zeros there. So let's rewrite that. He's paying 25,000 Rand plus 8% of, and we're going to do that calculation, it's 20,000 Rand. So on our calculators, we know how to do percentage. We've used that skill, so we take our 20,000, 1, 2, 3, and times by 8%. I've lost my percentage button. And we pay 1,600. It's not 20,000, it's 200,000. Okay, let's go back to that. It's 200,000, so let's go back and change that.
And 1 was 0.
And 1 was 0. It's 16,000 Rand. I thought that was a little bit too low. Okay, and you see how important it is to check things as you're going along. So 1.2 million, it's 200,000, not 20,000. So let's fix that quickly. Right, and that was 16,000 Rand. And he pays the original 25,000. So we add these up. I don't think we need a calculator. He's going to be paying 41,000 Rand for transfer duties. So already we've got one hidden cost. So over and above his house, for 1.2 million, he needs another 41,000 Rand to pay for transfer duties. Right, so let's move on to his next hidden cost. Right, there's something called security assessments. It's a levy, or another way of saying a tax, charged by the bank for an assessment of the property. Basically, what the bank does before they give you a bond is they actually go out and they check the property and they see, is it worth the amount that you're paying? Has it got that amount of value in it? And they will only grant you a bond if it has the correct value. But then, of course, the bank's not going to work for free. So the bank is going to charge you this assessment, security assessment. So the fee is 1,315 Rand, and VAT of 14% is added to this amount. So calculate the security assessment fee according to the value of Mr. Williams' house. Now, this is a once-off fee. It doesn't matter what the value of your house is. The bank is still going and doing the job. They are still going and looking at the house. So they don't care how much you're spending or how much money you have or you don't have to buy the house. They are going to charge you 1,315 Rand, and then they're going to add VAT to it. So what we need to do for Mr. Williams' house is we need to take, I think I should change to green. We need to take our 13, 15, and we're going to add VAT. Now I'm going to add VAT in one step by multiplying by 114%. So remember, we can do it in 2 steps, but we've done those skills before, so I'm going to do it in 1 step. I find it easier, and find our calculator. So it was 1315 times by 114%. And we get our answer of 1,499,1. So we can quickly discuss that. The answer was 1,499,1. And remember, we're dealing with money, and money needs to be 2 decimal places, so you must add your 0. So he pays nearly 1,500 Rand for the assessment levy. Hey, don't forget 2 decimal places. So there's kind of like little things along the way that you've got to bear in mind and just keep a track of. So let's see what his next hidden fee is. There's now also a home loan initiation. It's a once-off fee levied by the bank for initiating the new home loan. Okay, so Mr. Williams has gone to the bank and he said to them, I want a loan. Not only have they said, well, okay, we need to assess your house and we're going to charge you a levy first, we're also going to charge you to start this loan, and we're going to call it an initiation fee. The amount of 1,250 is the initiation fee. This is inclusive of VAT. What does inclusive of VAT mean? It already has VAT in it. So the VAT has been calculated. It's charged for every new house loan where the loan amount is greater than 500,000 Rand. Determine the home loan initiation fee for Mr. Williams' house. So we can see the bank charges the initiation fee for any loan over 500,000 Rand. So our question is Mr. Williams' home more than 500 or less? And we quite clearly know that 1.2 million is more than 500, therefore he has to pay this fee. And in actual fact, there's no calculations for us to do. It is as simple as it is just the amount that they're charging. Every now and again they give this to us, where they give us something where there's no calculations, one mark, and it's easy and it's simple and really nice.
Those are always the ones that I always look for when I was writing exams. Just, okay, right, which one's the easiest? Do all those ones and then work out the hard ones. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Easy marks.
I think should we take a little bit of a break from Mr. Williams' home loan?
Yes, and we'll sort him out later and we'll see where all his hidden costs are, and we'll make sure that we've got him. But yeah, guys, you know the drill. Grab something to eat. Make sure you have your pens and pads. You ready? And guys, chat to me on the page. It's still a bit quiet, but guys, come back. See you after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you guys have been paying attention. I hope you guys have been learning a lot of stuff like I have. I'm learning a lot about hidden costs. So next time when I'm buying myself a house, I'm going to be like, right, there's this cost, there's this levy, there's this. And best believe I'm going to be buying myself a couple of houses with my education and that degree. You know what I'm saying? But yes, guys, I'm going to hand over to Haley. We're going to continue the rest of the show.
One day, Ty's going to be thinking, no, I remember this woman.
Yes.
She taught me something, and there was something, there was a hidden cost.
cost.
I hope that I've helped. Okay, so before we went to the break, guys, we were talking about his home initiation fee, and remember, it was just as simple as pulling that number out of the question and giving it back to the examiner, and it was 1 mark. So look out for those easy marks. Let's go on to the next part of the question. Right. Mr. Williams has now got, right, the deeds office charges a registration fee for the registration of the title deeds. The title deeds basically are those documents that say, well, now the house is yours. And the mortgage bond. So your bond that you get from the bank, because not all of us have got like these 1.2 million Rand lying around under the mattress.
Yeah, just there, just there.
So the reality is that most of us actually are going to buy homes, and we're going to actually have to take out a bond with a bank. So if you've got the cash, then I guess some of these fees are not relevant, like the initiation fee with the bank, but the deeds office is going to still charge you. And it's according to the value of the house. So we've got from up to 80,000 Rand, you only pay 55 Rand. From 80,001 Rand to 150, you pay 200, and it goes up kind of the sliding scale. So the higher, the more money you pay for your house, then the higher this amount is. But we get to a place over 1 million, and they tell us that it's 500 Rand. So any value over 1 million, and you're still only paying 500 Rand. Right. Calculate the deeds office registration fee according to the value of Mr. Williams' house. So he was paying the house for 1.2 million. So his house was 1.2 million, 1,200,000. So we need to find it into our table. We find it there. So what are we going to do? We're only going to look at that block. And again, a nice question. We didn't have to do any calculations. We clearly see that he has to pay 500 Rand. Okay. So it was a simple question, and again, 1 mark. So those 1 mark questions are really nice. Let's move on to the next part of the question. The question now says, calculate the final amount of the hidden costs of the house. So let's go through what our hidden costs were. Right, I'm going to have to page back a few pages. So let's do that. See how many costs we had. I think it started at A. Right, our first one that we had was the transfer duty. So we had transfer duty of 41,000 Rand. Hope that you guys are all paying attention and we can remember these numbers. So 41,000 Rand. Then he had a security assessment levy, which was 1,499 Rand and 10 cents. He then had to pay this home lane initiation fee of 1250, and he needed to pay to the deeds office an amount of 500. So let's go to our question and let's add these all up. So we had transfer of 41,000. Then we had the security assessment, which was 1499.10. Then he had a initiation fee with the bank, which was 1250. And then finally he had the deeds office of 500 Rand. So those were all his hidden costs. Now, we're not going into, there might be like other hidden costs, like when you buy a house, you normally have an estate agent that comes and shows you the house, and then you've got to pay commission. And not going into all this. This is just purely he has seen the house and he's paying 1.2 million, and what's it going to cost him? And then there's lawyers and conveyances. Everybody's got their hand in the pie.
It's a lot trickier, but we're just going
But these are some of the hidden costs. Okay, so let's get our calculator out. So we're going to find a calculator. Right, let's clear that. So we had 41,000 Rand plus the 1499.10 plus the 1250 plus the 500. That's what he pays in total in hidden costs. Can't get that STD. 44,249 Rand and 10 cents. 44249. Was that the right number? 44,002, and let me just double check on the calculator. 44249. So those were all his hidden costs that Mr. Williams paid for his house.
For strictly just buying.
For just buying the actual house, for transfer duties and all the rest of it. So he needed 1,200,000 and 44,249 Rand, 10 cents. Perfect. Let's see what our next part of our question says. Yay. A lot of words to this one, so let's read it carefully. So we're still dealing with Mr. Williams. Now, if someone is buying a house, the banks will only grant a bond for a monthly repayment to a maximum of 30% of that person's monthly salary. So the reason they do this is that they don't want you to say, well, okay, I want to live in that house and it's going to cost me 1.2 million. Let's go with Mr. Williams' house. But basically, most of my salary is going to pay my bond because I still have to eat, I've got to pay for medical aids and transport and all the rest of it. So the banks have done this calculation, and I suppose they've had actuaries in along the way somewhere to say, well, the maximum that you can spend on your bond is 30% of your salary. Then you've still got enough left over for food and transport and all the rest of it. So they will only give you a bond of 30%. They won't give you more, because they don't want you to get into trouble. Because at the end of the day, if you get into trouble, Ty, what happens?
It just gets worse.
It gets worse. You can't feed the family. You've got to come up with strange things. And at the end of the day, if you can't pay your bond, then what happens? The bank's going to take your house back. Now, they don't want to do that. They don't want the house. They want you to stay in the house, but they want you to pay them every month.
So it becomes an issue for them because they have to now resell the house.
And they might lose on the house. And so it's all very complicated. 30%, that's it. So a house valued at 1.2 million will cost Mr. Williams, now we've done this calculation, 14,502 Rand per month in monthly bond repayments. So we want to know, what is the minimum amount that Mr. Williams must earn monthly to qualify to be granted this bond? So we've got his calculation of how much that 30% must be, but we need to work out what his salary needs to be. So I'm going to take these numbers out of here, and I'm going to say, well, okay, the value of the house is not important. We know the cost of the house. So we want our cost, which is our 14,502. That has to be a maximum of 30% of his salary. So we're going to take his salary and times it by 30%. And that basically needs to equal that. So I hope this is making sense to you guys, that we've got to take his salary, and 30% of his salary needs to be 14,502 Rand. And that's going to give me his kind of minimum salary that they're asking. So let's do this calculation. I want to know what his salary is. So I'm going to get salary on its own. So I'm going to divide this by 30%. I always do the opposite of what is done in the formula. So now I'm timesing, I'm going to divide, because then those cancel, and I'm going to divide on the other side by 30%. And this I can do on my calculator. So let's take our calculator. His amount for his bond was 14,502. I'm going to divide that by 30%. And I get an answer of 48,340 Rand. So let's write that in, 48340. Whoops. Not a pen. 48380. 340. So that is equal to his salary. Now let's read that question again, just to make sure that we've actually answered it. So when someone is buying a house, banks will only grant a bond for monthly repayment to a maximum of 30% of their salary. A house valued at 1.2 million or 1,200,000 will cost Mr. Williams 14,000 per month in monthly bond repayments. What minimum amount must Mr. Williams earn monthly to qualify for the granted bond? We need his minimum amount, and that's what we've calculated. So if Mr. Williams is earning anything less than 48,340 Rand, he will not be granted enough bond to actually cover the cost of the house. And the bank won't give him the bond.
Which means that he won't be able to actually buy the house.
Well, he won't be able to buy the house. But there are a few other options, Ta. He could maybe have a deposit. Maybe he's like saved over the years if he hasn't had a house. Or maybe Mr. Williams has just come out of school and he's just finished varsity and he's been living at home. And I'd like to be earning 48,000 Rand.
Exactly.
Just out of varsity per month. But okay. Would be quite interesting. But there are a few things that he could do. So like he could add probably a bigger deposit. But at the end of the day, if he's earning less than 48,340, he can't really afford this house. So, and that's what ends up happening with the cost of living going up, is at the end of the day, we kind of get into trouble because we buy a house, it's 30%, and then things go up and dates go up.
Fuel goes up.
I think that's probably something to be discussed in another day.
Exactly. But yes.
Starting to depress myself.
But guys, I hope you had as much fun as I did, because I was having a blast. This is very helpful. Like, I know now when I'm buying my house and my car and all that kind of stuff, because this is all usually that comes up, right? Like,
absolutely, it does.
So I need to know. Like, I'm going to look out for this stuff. So guys, you know the drill. Hit me up on the Facebook page if you guys are having any issues, anything you want to talk about. Guys, post it up on the page. And guys, I hope you had another blast like I did. And guys, we'll see you after next time when we come around. Hey.
Grade 10s. We'll see you again next week.
Peace.
Bye.